I mean, we all made it through the tundra of the frozenness of Michigan, and I was just talking to somebody out there that I looked at the next forecast for a few days, and it's not supposed to get really above freezing, and it just brings me back to my days when I lived in Minnesota, and so it just, I think we have to be built a little bit different here in Michigan, and I'm proud of you all for making it here this morning. I want to ask you a question real quick. Have you ever had someone promise that they would come to your house or be like, I promise I'll be there, and not show up? Or have you ever waited at a restaurant only to get stood up by another person? Maybe you were waiting for a lunch date, or maybe it was a dinner date, maybe it was a blind date, I don't know. Have you ever planned a PTO meeting or a volunteer group or a meeting and something, and people said like, oh, I'll be there, and then didn't come? Only to kind of show up and set up everything and get everything ready, and just people didn't quite make it. Have you ever been that person? I'm not going to make you raise your hand, like that just didn't show up, didn't call, didn't kind of follow up with it. Anybody? No, I said I wouldn't make you show it, right? But if you can't say amen to that, you might need to say ouch a little bit, right? It'd be like, oh, okay, all right, I get where this morning's going. This morning we are in a series called Kingdom of Heaven, and we're walking through the Sermon on the Mount, and we're looking at Jesus' words. And over these last few weeks, he's been in this, we're in this kind of section in this sermon where Jesus is kind of making this headway through these realities of what the law calls us to and what Jesus has called us to. He talks about this early on in this passage, and he basically says that I did not come to abolish the law and the prophets, I came to fulfill the law and the prophets. And then he goes through this series of things, these series of laws that basically all the people kind of know, and they've all kind of heard it before, like many of us in this room. Many of us know a lot about this. Many of us have heard it before. We've read through it some. We've flipped through the pages and we've said, oh yeah, I get it, I understand it, I know it. And then we start to build things upon it that fit our needs. And so instead of rearranging our lives to adhere to what this says, we've basically said, well, I'll rearrange this to fit what this does. And I'll kind of look at some of these things and I'll be like, yeah, some of those are good and some of it's fine, whatever. And I think there's some good stuff in here. But over time, it starts to just get watered down. It starts to get like, I don't feel like it today. It starts to be like, I'm just not feeling it this week or this month, or I don't know. When we stop rearranging our life around the Word and we start making the Word rearrange around us, it starts to get watered down. And so as we're here this morning, the main idea is this. The words of a believer are held to the highest standards of truth. The words of a believer are held to the highest standards of truth. Why? Because the words of a believer are and should be held to what Christ has exampled for us, what He has given us, what He has shown us to be. And so therefore our words should reflect the very words of God and should be held to the highest standards of truth. Make no mistake, last week we talked about lust, we talked about divorce, we talked about some of the flippant divorces that were happening, and well, you've heard it said, well, as long as you got a certificate of divorce, it's great. And some of you have just started kind of rolling out divorces out of convenience. Some of you have been rolling out these divorces just because you didn't like the other person and they did something that, they didn't adhere to the law, so now I can divorce them and move on. And then Jesus, not mistakenly, goes into this whole section on oaths, right? Because what is every marriage that we've probably all seen, what's one of the main things that you got to do? You've got to go through the I do statements, right? Like the vows. I'll let you in on a little secret. Don't be scared, those of you who are engaged in this room and have already asked me to marry. I don't think they're here this morning. That's great. There was a wedding that I performed, and as I was about, they are here this morning. Sorry. All right. This won't happen. Don't worry. I was about to get up, and I was about to walk up and like down the aisle. And as I'm kind of processing through this ceremony, I'm flipping through my notes, and I'm literally like, I don't have any place where they say I do in my notes. Like, I just totally left it out of my notes. The kind of like, hey, do you promise to do this, this, and this? And do you promise to, and then you both say I do. And that's kind of like the big part of the marriage. So I think I had a pen in my pocket, and as they went over and did like their unity candle, I was writing out what they were going to say I do in my notes, and nobody was the wiser. I asked people afterwards, and I was kind of like, hey, did you notice that? And they're like, what? What are you talking about? No. It's like, whew, good, because I wrote that out while they were praying over at the unity candle, because I had just totally forgotten one of the main parts, the vows of their marriage, right? They kind of said their vows, but they, like, at no point had they said, like, will you marry this person? I do. That's kind of like a main thing. It's like one of the things you're not supposed to forget as a pastor, and I just forgot it. But why do we say those things? Why do we make commitments? Why do we make oaths? Why do we make vows to one another? Because there's a promise attached to it. There's a weightiness attached to it. And so when I say that the main idea is the words of a believer are held to a higher standard of truth, it's because our words are supposed to have this weight that we're accountable to God for our words. And so when we make vows flippantly, when we make oaths flippantly, what are we doing then? What are we actually saying? What are we actually participating in? So let's get into the text this morning. We're in Matthew chapter 5, verses 33 through 37. Matthew chapter 5, 33 through 37. If you need a Bible, we'd love to get one in your hands. They're in the back over here. If you raise your hand, Jeff is going to give you a Bible. If you need a Bible, we'd love for you to follow us along with us. Because, like I said, right down front here, like I said, we're following through this track here of what Jesus is doing. And he's kind of walking us through step by step, because I honestly believe that Jesus is really smart. And that he ties all of these things together, and he knows what these people are going through. As he sits these people on the mountainside and he's preaching to them, he's like, I know that there's people that are going through anger issues. I know that there's people who are going through lust issues. I know that there's people who are going through divorce issues. There's people who do not hold to their word here. There's people who are just don't understand what it means to engage with others, and there's love for enemies, and there's giving. All of these things are the things that he's bringing up. But it's all tied to this first piece of, where is your heart? Where is your heart? Where is your heart? We do these things according to the heart, not just according to the law. So Matthew chapter 5, verse 33, it says this. Again, you have heard that it was said to those of old. So he's referring back to the Old Testament law. He's referring to Moses, ultimately, when Moses came down from the mountain, got the 10 Commandments. And then from there, the Lord describes all these other laws that are coming out. And so they've written out all these laws. You've heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not swear falsely, but shall perform to the Lord what you have sworn. I want us to take note of that. Because at face value, that seems really great. Seems right? Just seems like, okay, if we're going to swear to the Lord on something, then we should perform what we swear. But I say to you, do not take an oath at all, either by heaven, for it is the throne of God, or by earth, for it is the footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. And do not take an oath by your head, for you cannot make one hair white or black. Let what you say simply yes or no. Be simply yes or no. Anything more than this comes from evil. So there should be some antennas going up, right? I think especially in that first section, because when I read that first little verse, verse 33, again, you have heard it said of old, you shall not swear falsely, but shall perform to the Lord what you have sworn. That seems, at face value, great. But what are the people doing? What are they taking into account? And so let's look at it. Point number 1 is this: you shall not swear falsely. Has anyone in this room, I'm going to do something controversial probably here, like, oh, I swear to God, I'll do it. Anybody heard that before? Anybody been around a teenage girl before? Right? I'm not picking on anybody. But I mean, like we just say those things so oh, I swear to God. Oh, yeah, for sure. More so now, more than ever, I think we flippantly throw these kinds of phrases out. And I don't think in that moment anybody's really thinking, I am swearing to God an oath that I have made. Seriously, right? Like, no, we throw it out there. And I don't know that that's exactly what we're talking about here. I think we throw some flippant things out there, but I don't think exactly where Jesus is kind of like getting after people who are just flippantly throwing things out. But I do think what he's going after here is a serious nature of people saying, oh, I swear on the God of gods, on the Lord of lords, on Yahweh's name that I will perform this duty. And people were proclaiming it from the street corners, and they were saying these things to try to put weight behind their words, to try to put something behind their words. Yes, we've heard it from a lying man trying to convince his audience of his innocence. I swear to God. By trying to swear to a higher power as to free his victim from their discernment. Right? When we lie, what do? We add to our words to try to convince somebody, no, what I'm saying is actually true. You should believe me. When so many times the truth is so far from what's happening here, and so they flippantly throw it out there. But when we look at the statement in verse 33, you shall not swear falsely, but shall perform to the Lord what you have sworn, it doesn't seem that far off. We've heard similar statements. Do not murder. You shall not commit adultery. None of this sounds bad at face value. But what has Jesus already taught us in the last couple of passages? Well, murder is tied to anger. Adultery is tied to lust. If oaths, what are these things tied to? Well, we're swearing to something that's greater than us and bigger than us. And really, ultimately, later in the passage, he's like, you actually don't have charge over any of these things. Why would you swear like this? Why would you take these oaths like this? You don't have the power to do these things. The problem again and again comes down to one simple question. Where is the heart in this statement? Jesus calls out the idea that our words don't mean more than our actions. Our words don't mean more than our actions. If you're going to say something, let it simply be that your word follows your actions. Let it just simply be like, if I'm going to actually say something to you, I don't have to swear by something. I don't have to convince you of something. I just need to be somebody of my word. That should be enough. For the follower of Jesus Christ, the fact that we want to be honorable, that we want to represent the King, should be enough for us to follow through on our word, and people should start to know us by the way that we react and the way that we speak to other people. Should not have to come with all of these other platitudes and all of these other things that would validate our words, but it should be something that, no, you just know me to be somebody that will show up and do what I say I'm going to do. Why? Because I don't represent myself. I represent King Jesus. My words should hold these weights deeper than even what I can bring. Jesus knows that we can all talk a pretty good game. I think he knows that. But when it comes to following through, this is where the real battle is fought, right? Because again, when we talk about murder and anger, when we talk about lust and adultery, when we talk about our words, it really comes down to, well, where your words are where your actions should be, right? When you commit to something, are you following through with it? And I think it comes back ultimately into the struggle we live in today is we're a consumer culture. We live in a consumer culture that says, actually, the words that I speak are for me. I don't say things for you to be accountable to you. I say things so that I can get what I need in the moment and what I want. And really what I'm trying to do here is just create a space to where I can feel comfortable. I think there's something really true that we'll get down to. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. Just let it be yes or no. Don't make it something that's wishy-washy. Well, maybe. Well, what does that do? Just puts me, the consumer, in the position of power. If I say maybe, I can show up or I can not show up. I can do or not do. I just get to be a maybe. I get to be kind of wishy-washy in my commitment. And Jesus is like, no. This is a yes or this is a no. And you might be letting people down with the no, but you have to own that. And you might be overcommitting yourself with a yes, but you have to own that. But don't start making platitudes. Oh, I swear I'm going to be there. Oh, I swear. Oh, this time I'm going to show up for you. I promise you. Let yourself be of such character and such heart that just says, man, if I say yes, I'm going to do it. I'm going to the best of my ability. I was looking up some studies on this as we were talking about, well, if you say yes, is there any way that you can get out of something? What if there's a legit thing that happens? How do you respond to that? And I think it's legitimately owning up to whatever that might be, right? It really might be like, man, I've made a commitment to do this thing, and I might need to go and ask forgiveness and say, hey, is there any way that I can get out of this commitment? I'm sorry, I made a commitment that I should not have made. And I think that's where grace has to play into all of this, right? But I don't think it should just be I committed to something, I don't really plan on showing up. Or, I said no to that, but maybe I will if I feel like it. And moving through that consumer attitude. Why? Because point number 2 is this: you don't have the power you think you do. None of us actually have the ability and the power that we think we do. Verse 34 says this, but I say to you, do not take an oath at all, either by heaven, for it is the throne of God, or by earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. And do not take an oath by your head, for you cannot make one hair white or black. Have you ever heard somebody say, like, I'll be there, Lord willing. I'll be there, Lord willing. Or, I would love to do that, Lord willing. I really honestly think that these people aren't trying to just be like, fake in the way they say it. I think they're really trying to say, like, if the Lord wills that I participate, I will be there, Lord willing. But I can't control certain aspects, right? And so therefore, I shouldn't try to put those things on the line in saying that I have the power over these things. This obviously means that these people are trying to make these grandiose kind of oaths and swearing to, I swear on the great king of the city of Jerusalem that he's like, you don't have any control over that. I swear on the life of my mom. Well, you don't have any control over that. But we try to add value to our words in such a way that says, like, hey, I'm putting some weight behind this, right? I'm putting it on my mother's grave that I will show up. And it's like, why? You don't have any control over those things. What you do have control over is if you actually show up or not. That's often the case, is whether or not you schedule something else during that time, or whether or not you actually do what you say you're going to do. Those are the things you actually have control over. And if not, that's where you can say, man, I woke up this morning and I was vomiting everywhere. I'm probably not going to make it today. And I don't think you really want me to make it today, right? Like, those are the things we just don't have control over. What we do have control over is, I triple booked myself and you're least important on my list and I didn't really plan on showing up anyways. So, whatever. You'll understand. It's kind of funny. I'm a person of high justice. And so it can bother me at times when people don't hold to their word, or when I don't feel like the truth is coming out. I look back to my high school years when I was playing basketball, and I really thought that I was the best referee on the court pretty much all the time. Anybody else felt that way? Anybody else played a sport where you felt like you were probably you could see things better than the ref could? Ultimately, I would be playing a game, and I would call fouls on myself. I was that kid. Because I knew, like, if I foul somebody, like, I'm going to own it. I'm just going to own it. I know I did it. I was the one who, they went up for the shot and I'd slap their hand and like the ref would blow the whistle and I'd be like, hey, sorry, I did it, me, right? But I was also the guy that, like, if the ball went out of bounds and it went off of their foot and not mine and then it got called on me, that I was like, no. Like, no, you saw it wrong. It went off of their foot. Did you see the way that it bounced off, right? And I'll be honest, it makes you even more mad when the ref gives you a technical foul after that, right? And basically that's like you get into trouble for arguing with the ref so intently that he's like, yeah, they're going to get free shots now because shut your mouth, right? Because I was just in this position of like, I know what's right. I know. So I also know that the Lord must have a sense of humor, because this week or the last 2 weeks as I was preparing this message, I had 2 different people that I was trying to get lunch with that canceled on me multiple days last week and then multiple days this week. And so as I'm literally like preparing for this message, I'm walking through all of this and like, hey, are we still on for today? Oh yeah, today's not going to work. It was going to work for you yesterday when we scheduled it. All right, hey, when's it going to work? All right, maybe next week. Maybe next week. All right, we'll see what happens. There's a reality that we are called to a higher standard. Like we're just called to something different. And I understand there's circumstances that change and there's people that have certain jobs that, it's flexible and not flexible, all these different kinds of things. I'm not holding people to these lunch meetings, but I think there's a reality that all of us have been disappointed by somebody at some point. And we've all disappointed somebody. But when we start to look at what it is to make oaths to God, we're held to a different standard. And we don't have the power and the weight that we think we do at times. We don't have the ability to do certain things that we think we do. And so therefore, when we make commitments, the one that matters most in every single one of these commitments is not the person we're failing, it's the Lord. He's the one who sees our heart. He's the one who understands where we're actually coming from. He's the one who knows when we're lying. He's the one who knows the circumstance completely. So point 3 is this: let your words be clear and true. Let your words just be clear and true. It should never be said of you that you're a liar. It should never be said of a follower of Jesus Christ that they're a liar. It should be our heart's desire. It should be our goal. It should be, maybe it's something we're striving for in this world, that we are people that are honest and truthful. Why? Because we represent something greater than ourselves. We represent the one true King. And so every single time that we put our word on the line, we're not just putting ourselves on the line. We're not just putting us on, we're putting our word and the word that Christ has given us on the line. And part of putting ourselves on the line is this: let what you say be simply yes or no. Anything more than this comes from evil. These are the words of Jesus. Anything more than this comes from evil. How do we know this? Because every time we hold to the truth, we're resisting the surrounding phrases, the platitudes, the exaggerations that come from evil. We try to put our own spin on it so that somebody will take us more seriously, or somebody will think we're more important than we are, or somebody will be like, oh, I believe you this time. I think you'll show up this time. But no, there's something different here. Our words as believers should hold the weight of truth. Therefore, when we as believers lie, the punishment isn't that we need to go and offer a sacrifice like the Old Testament. Jesus is he's setting their sights on something different here. At this point in the text, obviously Jesus is alive and he's preaching this sermon, but Jesus knows that in about 20 chapters he's going to be tortured, he's going to be murdered on a cross, he's going to go to the grave, and he's going to rise again for all of the oaths that have been made that have not been held. And so it's not just that we're putting ourselves on the line and, oh, well, I lied, you caught me, all right, I'll go make my sacrifice. Today, now, when we lie, when we put ourselves on the line, there is grace and there is forgiveness, and that's the amazing truth of the gospel. But there's someone who paid the penalty already for those sins. There's someone who paid for our injustice, for our lies, for our half-truths, for our exaggerations. The punishment is that Jesus had to go to the cross and pay for our sins. So I have to ask the question, how much is your word worth? How much is it worth to keep to a simple yes or a no? And I'm not saying, obviously, in regular speech, it's not every time somebody asks you a question, it's either yes or no. We can process, we can engage, we're processing. But I think we need to be looking at the heart of this. It's to have a word that says, yes, I'm trustworthy. Because there's weight behind what I say as a believer. There's weight behind how I engage with people. Do you hold to your yes or no? Do you show up when you say you will? Do you say you're going to change and then fall back on your face into old habits? Do you promise to never take another drink? I swear I won't yell like that again. I promise I'll never forget something that important ever again. Or is it just maybe it's times where we just need to own our mistakes and our sin and just say, will you forgive me? I messed up. I need your forgiveness. I'm so sorry. I want to do better, and I'm going to need God's help doing better, but will you forgive me for that? Instead of just trying to work around it. It's owning what the Lord has given us. Megan and I were talking a little bit about this, and we have this alumni magazine that we got from our college. And it's funny, we're in that position. I remember being on college campus and seeing alumni come onto campus, and I was like, oh, you're so old. Now we're reading the magazine, oh, this is fun, and we're seeing some classmates and things like that, and we're flipping through this magazine, and Megan's like, man, these are my boyfriend's parents. I was like, those aren't my parents, right? No. But she's like, this was my boyfriend's parents who encouraged me to go to Cal Baptist, the college we went to, and I probably never would have ended up there without their encouragement. And we started to process through that, the way that God uses people, and how those little conversations of this relationship that obviously didn't last. And I was like, man, they went to Cal Baptist back in the 70s, loved the school, encouraged her to go to this school, and then we processed through, man, if she had never gone to this school, we never would have met, we never would have got married, we never had a kid, all those things. And I know both of us have felt at different times in our ministry, does what we do matter? And maybe you felt like that. Does what I do matter? When I say yes and I show up and it feels like nobody else showed up, does it matter? And it just sparked in my brain, man, these people probably had no clue the trajectory of your life and what you would do just by having this conversation about this college. And sometimes I don't think we recognize that our yes actually has weight that we will never see. These people will never know what happened to her life. They probably haven't really thought much about Megan in the last 20 years. Right? There's a reality that when we show up and we do and we say yes to something and we actually complete it, the Lord has things that He wants to accomplish through us if we hold to our word. When we show up for people and we stop to use this consumer mentality of what can I get out of it? Well, it's not worth it to me, so I'm not going to show up. Instead of saying, man, maybe the Lord is going to have me there to encourage somebody. Maybe I'm not going to take anything away from this, but maybe the Lord has somebody else taking something away from it. Maybe if I hold to my word here, it's not about what I take away, but it's about what somebody else is going to gain. Because my whole goal in life isn't how do people serve me, but it's to look more like Jesus so that I can serve others. Jesus doesn't get down and wash people's feet because it's fun. Jesus doesn't get down and wash people's feet because He's not the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. He gets down and He washes people's feet because He's trying to train His disciples. No, you guys aren't just leaders. You're not just volunteers. You have to be servants. Because what you're going to do is you're going to go into some really hard places that I've asked you to go, and you've said yes to this mission, and you're going to go to some places you do not want to go. And the reason you're saying yes is because I have a bigger plan and a bigger purpose. And when you show up, when you say you're going to show up, that's when my will is going to be accomplished. I believe the Lord is calling us into something deeper always. And I believe that He wants to do a work through our follow-through, through our yeses. I believe that He might want to do a work through our no's. It's okay to be somebody who says no. It's okay to put up boundaries. Because if you've ever heard it, a no leads to a yes somewhere else. And a yes somewhere leads to a no somewhere else. And that's how it should work. That's the reality of life. We can't just say yes to everything, because then we will get ourselves into a situation where we have double booked, we've done something, we can't now fulfill our obligation. And so therefore we say yes when we believe the Lord is leading us into it. Maybe it's after prayer. Maybe it's after consideration of what God's word has called us to. It's not always a yes just because it's the most comfortable, it's the easiest, it's just the most convenient, it's going to be the most fun option. Sometimes it's a yes because it's desperately hard, but it's what the Lord has called us to. And sometimes it's a no because it's desperately hard and it's not what the Lord has called us to. We have to consult what God has asked us to do. But our words should be simply yes or no. Anything more than this comes from evil. Jude, can you click back to our memory verse slide? The new verse this week is that. It's simply Matthew 5:37. Let what you say be simply yes or no. Anything more than this comes from evil. We need to be reminded of that truth. We need to be reminded that anything more than this is just me trying to convince. Let the actions of my life be the convincing truth. Let that be the convincer. So that when I say my words, it has weight, it has value. And when I live up to my standard of Jesus Christ, when He is the standard, He's the one I'm actually ultimately serving, He's the one I'm saying yes to, then it's okay. I get to say yes with confidence. And I get to do what He's called me to do. But we need help. And we need so much help all the time. It's the reason that Jesus came. It's the reason He died for us. It's the reason that He reminds us all the time of His goodness and His grace and His mercy and His forgiveness. Because we need help. So this morning we have communion here. And communion is just a reminder. It's a constant reminder, but it's a reminder of what Jesus has done for us. And so when we take communion, it's a reminder of this simple truth from Matthew 26. 26 and 28 says, "Now, as they were eating, Jesus took bread and blessed it, and after blessing it, broke it and gave it to the disciples and said, 'Take, eat. This is my body.' And He took a cup, and when He had given thanks, He gave it to them, saying, 'Drink of it, all of you, for this is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins.'" In other places in Scripture it says, "As often as you do this, think of me, remember me." Remember what's happening. The reason that we take communion as a body, as a fellowship of believers, is just to simply say, we need to remember what Jesus has done for us. Because we really quickly forget that this isn't just, hey, let's gather in this room so that we can look like a church. Let's gather in this room and show up because people are watching. That's a law, right? And Jesus didn't come to just forget the law. He came to abolish it by the blood of who He is. So that we don't come in this place to say, look, I showed up. We come into this place to say, man, I'm here to worship. I'm here to serve. I'm here to love on people. I'm here to grow. I'm here to be discipled. I'm here to be in community. I'm here to be part of the body that Jesus Himself says is desperately necessary. Not for you, but for the others in this room. because we didn't come to be served, we came to serve. And so when we come to the table, it's just that reminder of what Jesus has called us to. So we're going to take a moment. We're just going to have kind of some music playing in the background. And as you feel led, we'd love for you to just come to the table. You can take communion by yourself. You can take it with your family. We have a gluten-free option up front here, and then there's kind of regular bread on the sides. But we'd love for you to come and take and just remember what the Lord has done. So you just take the bread, you just dip it in the juice, and then you can take it together as you feel led. And then we'll come back together and we'll worship in a few minutes. So let's do that together.